Volkswagen rigs car software to pass emissions tests. More Apple car rumors, and selfies are more dangerous than sharks. Tech News Tonight is next.
This is Twit.
This is Tech News Tonight, episode 428 for Monday, September 21st, 2015. This episode of Tech News Tonight is brought to you by Braintree. If you're working on a mobile app and searching for a simple payment solution, check out Braintree. With one simple integration, you can offer your customers every way to pay. To learn more and for your first $50,000 in transactions fee-free, go to BraintreePayments.com/TechNight. Today, Volkswagen Chief Executive Officer Martin Winterkorn admitted to and apologized for the defeat device software that the automaker built into its vehicles to game the system of U.S. air pollution tests. Late last week, we learned that the company had intentionally rigged over 500,000 cars to pass smog tests. Joining us to talk about this story is Tim Stevens, editor-at-large at CNET. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you.
So was this a hack, or was it software that was built into the car?
It's software built into the car. So for these sorts of emissions tests that the government runs, basically there's a very set test protocol. You know, each car has to be tested in the same way to make sure that they're all tested accurately. And so there's a set regimen, which is basically to drive at a given speed, accelerate by a given amount. And it makes it pretty easy for the car to detect what's going on. And what Volkswagen did, or what Volkswagen's engineers did, was program the car to figure out when it's being tested by an EPA official or being run through this test, and put the engine into a different driving mode when that's happening. Then as soon as you stop doing that, the engine can go back into a different mode. So the idea is to make the car pretend basically that it's more efficient than it actually is. And then as soon as you're done with the test, the car would go back to its quote unquote normal mode, which would be less efficient. That's definitely not playing by the rules, but it's definitely the sort of thing we've actually seen similar things before. Ford has actually gamed the EPA's fuel efficiency test to do a similar sort of thing in the past. But since we're talking emissions here, this is a little bit more serious. And given the number of cars on the road that use this, it's definitely a very, very disconcerting thing.
So how long has this been going on with Volkswagen?
That remains to be seen. We only know that they have been caught doing it, but we don't know exactly how widespread that is. And in fact, we're just hearing, just as we're going live, actually, the Detroit News has confirmed that the U.S. government is not only looking into this one particular diesel engine that was mentioned earlier, but also into a diesel engine that's used also by Porsche and by Audi. So this could actually extend well beyond Volkswagen itself into larger basically the larger Volkswagen group, which includes quite a few other cars. Well, this could be a very, very big story that's only going to get bigger, and we're only really beginning to understand how big that is right now.
So how did this scam come to light? Was it a whistleblower? How did we find this out?
We don't really know exactly how it came to light just yet. You know, it certainly seems like I think there probably was a whistleblower. Obviously, this is the kind of thing where a lot of people would have to know about this sort of thing, and a lot of people had to be complicit in allowing it to go forward. So it's not the kind of thing that a rogue software engineer would go ahead and put something like this in the car. But again, this is the kind of thing that we've seen in the past in other tests, and ultimately, I think a lot of other manufacturers are probably doing similar hacks and tweaks and things like this to try to get around other regulations, whether they be noise related or fuel economy related. And exactly how many of these are going to come to light, that remains to be seen. But I think there are probably some very stern conversations going on. A lot of other manufacturers right now asking exactly what's going on and how can they very quickly and quietly fix them before they get in trouble like Volkswagen's getting in trouble right now.
Now, is this very difficult to do? I know we had a really old car, and when we would bring it in to, get the oil changed, and right before we would get it smog test, there was, the dealer was, the car repair person said, we can just do this and make it just pass the smog test. So, it just seems like it wouldn't be that hard. I'm not saying we did that, but I'm not saying we didn't either. But yeah. Is it very hard to do this?
It's actually pretty easy for a modern software engineer working within the automotive world to make this sort of thing happen. Basically, the trick comes into detecting exactly when this test is being performed. So identifying when you're being driven at level throttle for 5 minutes and then accelerating by 20% and doing whatever the sequence of events that needs to happen. And basically what they would do at that point is kind of cut down on the amount of fuel that's being sprayed into the engine, which would cut down power quite a bit and also cut down those emissions. So that would help the car to pass the test, but ultimately you wouldn't want the car to drive like this all the time because it wouldn't have a lot of power the engine might not even be reliable when it's run that way because maybe it's not getting enough fuel to be burning cleanly. It might start to run too hot, and at that point the engine could overheat, which would be bad. But if you're only talking about a 10-minute test that it needs to pass, well, then that's fine. And so that's the reason that we see these sorts of things, so that these engines can be producing more power and being better to drive, but still going into this kind of ultra clean, ultra lean mode when they need to, just to pass these tests. That's definitely not within the spirit of the law, and certainly is the kind of thing that Volkswagen is about to see how much trouble they can get in for.
So let's move on to some happier, more environmentally friendly car news. The Wall Street Journal is reporting again on the rumored Apple car. People familiar with the matter say we could see it by 2019. What's the tech that they're working on according to today's article? Is it self-driving or electric?
So according to the report today, Apple is working on having an electric car that will not necessarily be autonomous at launch. The 2019 again is the target date that they're looking for, which is pretty optimistic. That's probably about 5 years for the length of the program, which is on average for the development of a new car, but for a new company to move in and develop a new car, that's very, very optimistic. But the report did say that Apple is willing to move forward even if with a non-autonomous car, but basically to have a more traditional electric drive car. And that's all the details that we have at this point. There have been images of minivans being driven around by Apple people as part of this Project Titan, as it's called. But ultimately, we don't know a lot about the car at this point. We're kind of putting together a lot of little pieces, and they're sort of fitting together in some places and sort of not. Another interesting part of the report is that they're actually going to be tripling the number of engineers that they've hired, which would put them over 1,000 engineers working on this project. So this is obviously a very large-scale project at this point.
So you reported, as a lot of sources did, over on, I think it was Friday, that Apple met with California DMV autonomous vehicle regulators. Do you think that's just a separate project?
It's probably some extension of this project. It remains to be seen exactly how all things fit together, but I think that's probably the long game for Apple, is to move into that sort of realm. But ultimately, it would make a lot of sense for Apple to make a smaller step forward for their first product and go with a non-autonomous product. But within California, when you're testing an autonomous vehicle on public streets, that vehicle needs to be registered with the state and driven by individuals who are also registered with the state. And as part of that, California requires that you submit a lot of information about the sort of tests that you're running. Any time that you have to, for example, take the car out of autonomous mode, you need to send a report to California to let them know exactly what happened, why that went forward, how you're fixing that. And that requires a lot of transparency that, of course, Apple is not particularly fond of when it comes to their other consumer electronics products. So this could be a very big change to how Apple does things. And that could be something that's pushing Apple away from having an autonomous car at the start. Maybe they can keep things a little bit more quiet up front.
So you just got back from the Frankfurt Auto Show. What were some of the favorite vehicles or new technologies you saw there?
Right. Frankfurt is a really huge show. They only do it every 2 years. It's so big. But there were a lot of really interesting new cars at the show this year. And probably the one that was most talked about was the Porsche Mission E. It's a four-door, four-seater sports car made by Porsche, all electric with two 300 horsepower motors, so over 600 horsepower combined. But still offering a range of about 310 miles. So definitely you can see this as a Tesla Model S competitor. Really beautiful car, long and low, and should be very, very high performance indeed. Just a concept, unfortunately, but it is a beautiful car, and it could be a sign of what the next generation Porsche Panamera looks like. The Panamera is Porsche's current four-door, four-seater. But an all-electric version of that would be quite an interesting car, and certainly would be very, very strong competition for Tesla. So I think a lot of people, myself included, are hoping that they will bring this car to market. But if they do, it would probably be at least 5 years out. And then one of the other interesting cars was not actually a real car. It was a video game car, which is the Bugatti Vision Gran Turismo. We've seen more and more manufacturers playing around in Gran Turismo and launching kind of special edition concepts within the game. Bugatti did design a special car just for the Gran Turismo video game. But they liked it so much they actually built the thing and brought it to Frankfurt and rolled it out. And it's this ridiculous looking, beautiful, long and low and French royal blue painted racing car that will never see the light of day from a showroom standpoint. You'll never be able to buy the thing. But they brought it out at the show, and you can go and download it for free in the game Gran Turismo if you like, which I think is a pretty interesting way of marketing a new car, to bring it out in a video game and see what people think. But it looked beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
It's interesting. It reminds me of like novels that come from movies, like cars that come from the video game car.
Yeah, absolutely. Gran Turismo has definitely pushed a lot of people into trying out new cars that they might not have thought of buying otherwise, and it certainly helps for brands to make a strong impact here in the U.S. And now it's kind of turning things around, letting the game kind of dictate how a car design should be. It's pretty interesting.
Well, Tim, thank you so much for joining us. Tim Stevens is editor-at-large at CNET. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, Megan.
Take care. A camera that keeps you from being a cliche, and we've got your comments on the war against ads. But first, this episode is brought to you by Braintree, code for easy online payments. If you're a mobile app developer, check out Braintree. Braintree is the payment solution used by companies like Uber, Airbnb, Hotel 2Night, and Living Social. Braintree scaled with these companies from early stage startups to the successful companies they are today. So Braintree can scale with your business too. Braintree has made the payment experience in these apps seamless and magical, and now you can add a similar experience to your own app. They have excellent customer service, simple integration. Braintree will get you ready to receive payments quickly. Braintree gives you a full stack payment solution, support for all payment types your customers might want, so you can start accepting PayPal or Apple Pay, Bitcoin, Venmo, cards, and whatever is next, all with a single integration across all platforms with superior fraud protection, customer service, and fast payouts. To learn more and for your first $50,000 in transactions fee-free, go to braintreepayments.com/technight. Kickstarter announced yesterday that they are reincorporating as a PBC. That's a public benefits company, which basically means they can't turn into stupid profit-driven jerks no matter how much money they make. Kickstarter, of course, is a company designed to harness crowdsourcing to help all kinds of independent projects get off the ground. In a statement on their website, they say they are joining an ever-growing list of companies like Patagonia and This American Life to become a benefit corporation, a designation that requires them to do something that will aid the public and to report on their social impact. According to Mashable, this year more people have died from selfies than shark attacks. No joke. Many of the deaths result from getting hit by trains while either trying to take a photo with the train or while on train equipment. The leading cause of the selfie fatalities have happened when tourists attempt to take a selfie on some sort of monument, like the Taj Mahal, and then they fall off of it. Of course, these are only the reported deaths. More and more landmarks have been banning selfies with or without sticks. Speaking of better ways to take photos, the Next Web is reporting on a camera restricta, a device that prevents you from taking cliched tourist photos, like that dangerous Taj Mahal photo. Camera restricta is an app that comes with a 3D printed retro camera. Inside, you'll find electronics controlled by an ATT Tiny 85 microcontroller. The app uses GPS and geotagging to find photos that have been taken nearby. If too many photos have been taken, the photo you're about to take, the app retracts the shutter and blocks the viewfinder and does not allow you to take that photo. The open source web app queries a Node.js server that developer Philip Schmidt built to query Flickr and Panoramio. Last week, we told you that well-known app developer Marco Arment has pulled his ad blocker called Peace from the App Store only a few days after the release of iOS 9. His argument was that he just felt bad about being the arbiter of good taste when it came to mobile advertising. His $2.99 app was #1 in the App Store, and in a blog post Friday, he directed people to an article on how to get a refund from Apple because bouts of conscience or not, developers are not allowed to issue refunds themselves. Today, Arment reports that Apple contacted him to say that they would refund all purchases of Peace. This is something they almost never do, Arment says. We asked you what you thought of the ad blocker debate, and here's how some of you responded on Facebook. Larry Wagner writes, if the advertising industry was friendlier to those of us in the general public, I might have a little more sympathy. However, with all of the crazy ways they find to force us to look at ads that we are not interested in, and with the tracking that happens, I have trouble feeling any pity at all for anyone who loses money because of this. I think those of you who are web publishers and content producers should be screaming loud and clear at the people who put their advertisements on your pages. Demand change because they don't listen to us. Thank you, Larry. Stephen Ort says, I don't mind ads. I just don't like the full ads that take over the screen or the autoplay ones. And Dana Schwartz commented, I suspect that if ad blockers become too common, the ad suppliers will just have to do a little more work on their embedded code on the content pages to make their advertising look like it was being served by the page owner, essentially making it look like first-party content, which wouldn't be blocked. Advertising wars will continue. If you want to weigh in, go to our Facebook page. And finally tonight, Watch OS 2 is available to download today on your Apple Watch. If you have an Apple Watch, you can update through the Apple Watch app on your iPhone. Make sure the battery on your watch is at least 50% charged and your watch has to be on the charger in order to update. It took me almost 2 hours to complete the full update, so give yourself some time too. And that is it for this edition of Tech News Tonight. You can subscribe to the show at twit.tv/TN2. You can write to us at tn2@twit.tv, and you can watch live every weekday at 4 p.m. Pacific. And don't miss our morning news program, Tech News Today, every weekday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm Megan Maroney. Thanks for watching.
Bandwidth for Tech News Tonight is brought to you by CashFly.com.